Welcome, everyone, to the Transit Unplugged Live CEO Roundtable here at the Vontis booth at APTA TRANSform. Great to have you here. Come on over. We're going to spend a few minutes talking to some of the world's leading public transit CEOs here at the Vontis booth. Thank you for sponsoring us, Vontis. Let's kick it off with Andy Lord, the Commissioner of Transport for London. Andy, thank you for coming. You made it all the way across the pond. You were a recent guest on the podcast. Thank you for that. Tell us a little about yourself and what's happening in London.
Great, thanks, Paul. Afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here at APTA. I'm Commissioner, so it's a very posh name for Group CEO of TfL. TfL is the largest integrated public transport authority in the world. We run all of the rail services within London, all the bus services, strategic road network, trams, and the Elizabeth line, as well as our river services, taxi and private hire licensing as well. We move about 11 million passengers a day. We have 27,000 colleagues, and it costs us about £9.5 billion per annum to run that. But last financial year, for the first time in our history, delivered an operating surplus to cover the cost of our operations, which is an incredible achievement. So very proud of what we do, how we do it, but fantastic to be here because we can learn from everybody else as well.
Very good. Thank you, Andy. Why don't we give all of our panelists a round of applause and thank them for being here today. Next, we're going to hear from Dottie Watkins. She is the CEO of CapMetro in Austin, a good friend, and also hosted our TV show down there just recently. We had a great time tasting their great barbecue and riding their system. It's actually got a $7 billion expansion program going on there at CapMetro, one of the largest in America.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Dottie Watkins, President and CEO at CapMetro in Austin, Texas. And as Paul mentioned, we've got a lot of fun things going on down in Austin. Most exciting is Project Connect, which is our vision for transit expansion over the next decade or so. But next spring, we'll be launching 2 new BRT lines as a first step in that expansion. We've been very blessed to get small starts grants for 2 new lines to go through the eastern portion of our service area. And we're really excited to start that. Along with that, we're starting a new microtransit zone. Our microtransit service that we call Pickup has been very powerful tool in helping us serve neighborhoods and communities that are otherwise really kind of hard to get transit connections to. So we're really excited about that.
Very good. Thank you. And next is my good friend Dwight Ferrell from Detroit. He runs Smart Transit there and recently handled all the transportation for the NFL draft, which happened there, the National Football League draft, and got quite a story. Dwight, thank you for being here, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Paul. I'm Dwight Ferrell, General Manager for the Suburban Mobility Authority for Regional Transportation, SMART. And we did have the good fortune of providing the transportation for the NFL draft along with the Detroit Department of Transportation and the People Mover. We leased 11 locations throughout our 2,100 square mile area, and our ridership was about 40,000 people that we brought into downtown Detroit. SMART provides suburban service through all of Macomb County, Oakland County, and parts of Wayne County, and some service into Detroit. One of the things that we're focusing on right now is what we call smarter mobility. We've come to the realization that most people don't go more than about 5 miles from where they live. And so we're trying to figure out how to expand our microtransit, much like Dottie said, to be able to serve that need in this post-pandemic world. So we're looking at that, and then also looking at maybe the possibility for some other kind of fixed guideway service in the future. So we've got a lot going on, Paul.
That's great. And we hope to go to Detroit in 2025 and film an episode of our Transit Unplugged TV show. And we're going to talk about the resurgence of downtown Detroit and the role that public transit has played in making that city come back alive.
And if you guys have not, and if you haven't been to Detroit, whatever it was that you thought that was negative about Detroit, forget it.
It's coming back. Dwight's in the middle of it.
Absolutely forget it. Absolutely forget it. Detroit is on the come up. If any of you all saw any of the coverage for the NFL draft, 750,000 people in downtown Detroit for the draft. So obviously it's safe place
That's
to go.
right. Very good. All right, Shawn Donaghy, who recently came Tell them where you came from and where you're at now, Shawn.
Yes, I'm at the North County Transit District in San Diego County, home of the best damn transit employees in the United States of America.
Boom, baby.
Trademark.
Trademark.
I've been fortunate to work at quite a few transit agencies. Started my public transit career in Cincinnati, went to Fort Worth, Texas, was the CEO at C-Tran in Vancouver, Washington, two-time Public Transit System of the Year, and now in the beautiful San Diego County area. For us, we're kind of a unique agency. We are one of only 3 agencies in the United States of America that have commuter rail, hybrid rail, and bus operations. Hybrid rail is slightly different than light rail. We're one of only 3 agencies that hold the designation of, well, there's more that have hybrid rail, but we're one of only 3 that has all 3 of those. Big projects for us. Like everybody else, we're on the horizon with microtransit. We just launched one of our pilots in San Marcos, doing very well. Actually, one of the things we did is we dropped the fare on it after about a month or 2 into that service, and we pretty much doubled the service overnight when we allowed youth opportunity to ride free in some of those items too. But some of the bigger projects for us are rail relocation. Climate resiliency is a big issue along the coastal bluffs for us. If you've ever ridden our coaster service or if you've taken the Amtrak Pacific Surfliner, we are literally hundreds of feet from the ocean. That creates some problems for us in the long term. The bluff erosion is happening. We want to double track that area. The lagoons, due to climate change, are growing. So sometimes at high tide, the tide is pretty close to the track where the trains come through. So a lot of good energy, a lot of good things going on. And thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Adam Leishman's here from Hong Kong. He's got quite a pedigree in public transportation, becoming a good pal of mine. Tell him a little about yourself and what you've done, my friend.
Thanks, Paul. Look, I come from 3 generations of public transport operators, Paul, my grandfather, my father, and I kind of became an accidental CEO in 2013. I was involved in business development, and we bought a business in London, actually, running 450 buses in London, and we couldn't find a CEO, and my business partner ran out of his visa, so I was kind of the last man standing and became the CEO. And it completely changed my life. Experiencing running buses in London was just a mind-altering experience. And then on the back of that, was fortunate enough to win a contract in Singapore to run 400 buses there. The first time a new entrant went into that market.
As Tower Transit.
That was Tower Transit.
Not Tower Records, Tower Transit.
Tower Transit, which is Kelsian Group in Australia. And more recently, I set up my own business, Ascendal, and bought City Bus in Hong Kong with a private equity group. And for the last 4 years, I've been the CEO of that business up until 2 months ago when we sold it. And I was moving about 1 million people a day across 1,700 buses and 5,000 staff. And now, as of today, we just started an operation in Fort Lauderdale, in Davie.
Congratulations.
We have 4 contracts in the US now as well. So I've got quite a spread of experiences.
That's great. So one of the interesting things that he brings to the table is he's operated transit in really the 3 premier cities in the world when it comes to public transportation: Hong Kong, London, and Singapore. Just some of the most amazing transit systems. So great job, brother. Thank you for doing that. Speaking of London, 007 here, our man in London, made it across the pond for us here. Andy has got so much going on. If you haven't listened to his podcast episode, Transit Unplugged, we kind of break it all down over half an hour. But tell us about 1 or 2 of the big things you've got going on there at TfL.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So obviously we're now 3 years after the Elizabeth line opened, fastest growing railway in Europe, huge success. So now we're working on upgrading some of the other tube lines. So the big project we're doing on the tube is the upgrade of the Piccadilly line, which is the primary east-west link from Heathrow through the centre of the city and out to the northeast. New fleet of rolling stock built by Siemens. First train arriving in London imminently for testing. It's just under a £3 billion programme of work that will increase capacity on the line by about 12 to 15%. New walk-through first ever air-conditioned trains on the deep tube in London, going to service towards the end of 2025. So that's the major project on the tube. We also have the Docklands Light Railway, our driverless light rail system in the east of the city. We have the new rolling stock for that, also under test, built by CAF in Spain. Again, transformative from the customer experience perspective, but also from a capacity perspective. So 2 really major programs on the rail side that we're focusing on. And then the other big thing that's occupying my mind is how we convince our new government in the UK to give us some more money so that we can continue to invest and maintain the services that we do. So get a long-term sustainable capital funding deal for London.
Tell us real quickly about the model there of how you're structured. You're actually a department of the city government. You report to the Mayor of London?
That's correct. We're a public sector organisation, wholly owned subsidiary of the Greater London Assembly. We have an independent board appointed by the Mayor. I'm accountable to the board and the Mayor, who's chair of the board. The Mayor has complete control over TfL in terms of decision making. And he actually, by legislation, has the ability to set the fares himself.
Wow.
So I run a £9.5 billion cost base. I do what I can to influence his decision making on the fares, but ultimately the Mayor is the one who sets the fares. So we're very proud of having an affordable system. We have the lowest bus fares in the UK. And we generate the operating surplus so we invest in it going forward. All our meetings are fully scrutinised, held in public, and I have the pleasure of attending various public committee meetings to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it.
I'm sure all the time. We're going to go down the line, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Andy Lord, how in the world do they get everybody to ride transit in London? Because everybody rides, and we need that here in America. You know, less than, on average, across America, only 5% of the people ride public transit on a regular basis. What's your number there? Do you know?
Well, we're 90% ridership compared to pre-pandemic levels, 11 million passengers a day. London has a 9 million population. Not everybody is coming into the office every day. So I want more people to ride.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing we did is we refused to cut services during the pandemic, and which enabled us to have high frequency turn up and go services. And what we have is a tube system that is designed to connect people from the mainline stations and bring them to the place of work. We have a bus system that is designed to operate in the outer reaches of the city. It's the most affordable element, particularly for people of low income. And it's their primary means of travelling, and we have an ambitious target of 80% of everybody in London either walking, cycling, or using public transport by 2041.
80%. Wow, that's amazing. All right, Dottie. So Dottie started her career as a bus operator. Matter of fact, when I was down there with her, we were riding a bus, and we went out to Barton Springs. And when we got off the bus, she said, "Oh, by the way, I started driving with him when I started." Quite a story, Dottie.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have quite as many generations as Adam, but I'm a second generation CapMetro employee. My dad worked in vehicle maintenance at CapMetro. And when I was a student at the University of Texas, convinced me that I should apply for a part-time job driving buses. And it paid a whopping $7.19 an hour, which was more money than I had ever imagined making at the time. And so I hopped on the opportunity and drove for a couple of years and trained bus operators and kind of did all the bus operations jobs over the course of my now 30-year career in public transit. So it's been a lot of fun.
Let me ask you a follow-up to that. So in Austin, when Randy was there, you all passed the $7 billion referendum. Has politics changed? Are things changing? Or are you still on course? What's happening?
We're still on course. I wouldn't say politics have changed. We are still in the state of Texas, which is one of Austin's unique challenges and opportunities because we tend to be a much more progressive city than the rest of the state around us. Although all of the cities in Texas are getting more and more progressive. Texas is an enormous place. And so there's just
big as many countries.
there is indeed a lot. We are on course. We're actually looking in the next couple of months with our partners to be looking at a draft environmental impact statement for our light rail line, which is the biggest chunk of money in that $7 billion investment. But things are moving forward. We're really excited about how that's going. We still have tons of local support, which is great. I think the pandemic was we made the difficult decision to go for the vote during the pandemic. We had actually been preparing for a November 2020 election long before we knew that we were going to have a global pandemic. But we knew that the problems of our community weren't going to go away just because we were all sitting at home for some unknown amount of time. And so we went ahead and went for it, and that was great. It would have been great if we'd managed to not have inflation coming out of it and all the other problems that all of us are facing post-pandemic. But we're on track, no pun intended.
That's awesome. On track, yeah. I was just in Austin last week on one of your tracks, and you still have a great service there. It's growing. It's just going to be phenomenal. it's really one of the most exciting agencies in the country for what's happening there. So Dwight, tell us about some big projects going on there in Detroit and how you're recovering the city.
Well, the biggest project that we have that's going on that I mentioned in my opening is smarter mobility. Travel patterns were already changing even before the pandemic. The pandemic just took it to a whole different level. One of the things that we're addressing in Metro Detroit is a lot of you know it's a manufacturing city, or at least it was. And so now trying to make that adjustment to serve manufacturing shifts to now more service jobs coming into the organization, like Amazon and other places like that, then we have to be able to provide more frequent service. The other thing is that we are also taking into consideration the silver tsunami that's coming as it relates to more and more baby boomers who are retiring. And if you've ever had the misfortune to ever have to take your parents' keys like I have, it's awful because that loss of independence. And so we're looking at smarter mobility as a way to be able to provide that kind of service across the region that allows people to maintain their independence. And quite frankly, we have a number of people who are in the millennial and Generation Z generation who don't want a car. And so being able to provide that service to give them those options. We've done some research in that space, and it's not that people couldn't afford a car. They just rather do something else with the money for a car. So there's a lady that works at Smart with us. She and her husband could afford 2 cars, but she says she doesn't want to give up her golf club membership. Okay, all right, well, I can see that. And so that's what we're looking at in terms of the smarter mobility, how we can do it cheaper, how we can have the service actually fit the need, as opposed to, well, why do you have all these empty buses out here? And the other thing we're looking at too is moving away from what I call the Southwest Airlines model to the Delta model. And by that I mean Southwest Airlines has one plane, 737. They may be different lengths, but there's just one plane. Delta has planes of different sizes so they can go to different places. And so that's the other part about we're going to be diversifying our fleet, as well as, making the transition to low emission, zero emission, but also making sure that we have a fleet that better reflects the ridership. So that's something else that we're doing. And so that's it for right now. It's more than enough to say grace over.
There you go. You probably can tell Dwight has a lot of experience. He and I have worked together in this business for over 35 years together in various places, and Detroit is well served by having someone, a seasoned leader like him, at the helm.
I've worked with these 2 funds in Cincinnati and in Austin.
That's right. All right, Shawn, what do you got going on there? What's the biggest thing happening?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say how amazing it is to have multi-generational
Your
leadership
dad.
here. Yeah. I got to go there real quick. Not you, Dwight. I'm also 3rd generation public transit. I'm contractually obligated to give a shout out to my grandfather, who's in the APTA Hall of Fame, and my dad, who just retired as a transit CEO about 3 years ago in Ohio. So love being up here with the multi-generational aspect of transit. I think it speaks volumes of the industry. We got a lot of unique things going on, and I'm gonna state the obvious. We've got a lot of capital projects happening in our world, but something that we're also dealing with is workforce development. One of the things that's really an impact, especially in Southern California, is the cost of living. And so when we have conversations with our frontline employees, or even up to the director, manager, director level, we really have to be thoughtful about where people live. We have a great deal of our workforce that's an hour from our facilities, an hour and a half from our facilities. And that's just for them to be able to have that livability factor. So how are we as an agency really trying to transform our employee experience, what we want that to look like, making sure that our operators have the right shifts so they can take care of their families, not working six and a half days a week. And then on the capital project side, I mean, we're a huge county. Like San Diego County, just in terms of square miles, is big enough to be like the 48th largest state in the U.S. And that's a big deal because MTS does an absolutely phenomenal job of the city of San Diego itself, and really a lot of East County. I thought I saw Brian Riley over here. He's our chief operating officer. He's amazing. But we sort of handle the rest, all of North County, 73, 76, 78, the I-5 corridor. Our commuter rail service took a little bit of a hit during the pandemic because we didn't see that commuter service down into San Diego. But what we saw was almost a doubling of ridership on the week. And so we really moved a lot of our service around to sort of manage midday, later in the evening, weekend service. We sort of, much to what everybody else said, we sort of layered on top of that really our NCTD Plus service, which is our sort of microtransit, and it sort of overlays over our fixed route and some of the other spaces. And I think the idea behind that for us was, are there opportunities, like Dwight said, to change the condition of the type of bus that's in that scenario? And that's a big deal for us. We're providing the same level of service, possibly even a little better. Our planning team is absolutely phenomenal. They do a great job of really sort of imagining what North County could be and what it looks like. So just real happy with their work, and we got a lot of great stuff going on.
That's great. Adam, before you go, I want to recognize a couple CEOs that are in the audience. My good friend John Sisson, who runs Delaware Transit, the whole state, an amazing transit system. John, thanks for being here. And Tom Droach, my friend from up in Ben Franklin Transit in Washington State. Thank you so much for being here, my friend. Used to run the buses for me in Baltimore at MTA, and I always told him, you need to be a CEO. You're bigger than just running buses, and he's got him so happy for you, my friend. All right, tell us in Hong Kong, one of the interesting things you may not be aware of, but in Hong Kong, there's no real public subsidy for the bus or the rail. They make their own money. How do you do that, man?
You have a lot of people catching buses.
$1 a head, come on.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have a subsidy for buses in Hong Kong. Traditionally, we never have. And 90% of the public use public transport for their trips. So 90%.
90%.
Which is, I think it ranks #1 in the world. It's quite amazing. But I think that's only possible when you have a holistic view on how to build and develop your city. And as an Australian, I think a lot of the cities that we have are very similar to the US, where we have a thing called urban sprawl. And it makes it very difficult to run commercial transport operations. Then I had the privilege of living in London for a few years, and it reset my thinking, and I decided not to have a car. I'm one of those people, actually, Dwight. I enjoy living in a city where I don't need to have a car, and I've done that in London and Hong Kong. I haven't had a car for 8 years. But I think we need to rethink how we do cities. I think urban sprawl is our enemy. Cars and roads are our enemy, in a sense, if you want to use colorful language. And we need to get urban planning departments working alongside transport departments. And the transport infrastructure needs to be the backbone of the community. And then we need to build density around those stations. And that's the only way you can make public transport commercial. And I look at a model like in King's Cross, if anyone's been there in London. And Dwight, you're talking about reinvigorating a city. Make public transport the backbone of that. And you look at King's Cross in London, it was like the worst area you could go in London. If you wanted to buy drugs, you went to King's Cross. They put major stations in that go to France, go all across the UK, and the bus stops there, you can get anywhere in London. And now it's like the hottest place to live in London. It's a fantastic case study. And I think we need to be thinking more than just buses or trains. We need to think about how we make them the backbone of the community and change the perception of what public transport is. What we bring to a city is very unique. If you list me all the problems cities face in the world, where 55% of the world's population live, public transport helps with just about every single one of those.
That's right.
So I think we need to get better at being advocates for taking money out of, let's say, roads and putting it into public transport, transitioning people into public transport, because actually people will choose to live that way if we give them the right opportunity.
Wow, I think that deserves a round of applause. Way to go. That's great, Adam. All right, Andy, what do you want to talk about next? Tell us something cool going on in London, man.
Well, pick up on Adam's point. There's been a big debate in the UK. You'll be aware of, some of you will be aware of a program called HS2, which is the next high-speed rail link. And the previous government decided to chop off the northern section and also say it wasn't going to come into Euston in London. And the problem is that everybody focused on the journey time benefit of building this super fast railway and how it was going to reduce the journey time between London and Birmingham. Birmingham's the second largest city in the UK, hugely important, but it was all about how it's going to improve the journey time for people from Birmingham to London not the other way around. And it wasn't talking about, most importantly, about the economic growth and the wider benefits of how it would free up capacity on the existing rail line, benefit towns and cities and areas there, whilst also creating economic growth and regeneration. So we have spent a huge amount of time in TfL over the last year, 18 months, talking to the government, talking to the supply chain, talking to business stakeholders, exactly to Adam's point around transport infrastructure is the driver of economic growth. It's the driver of jobs, it's the driver of skills and development, and it's a driver for how you certainly grow the country economy more widely. And we've been really successful with that. So, for example, we had no idea before the pandemic how many jobs were directly attributable to TfL outside of London. So we did the independent review. We are directly responsible for over 100,000 jobs outside London and the southeast of England. So that's jobs in the north of England, in the north and east, the Midlands, the southwest. That drives economic benefit to those areas. The second thing that we focused on is we are the second largest landowner in London after the Crown Estate, which is the royal family. So how do we maximize that? We have a lot of very old infrastructure, a lot of operational infrastructure that we'd like to upgrade and replace, a lot of very old train sheds that we can rationalize, and then we can reduce the land footprint and then build on it. So we now have our own property company called Places for London. We will be building by the end of this decade 20,000 new homes on our land, half of which will be affordable.
That's amazing. All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit. So Dottie's had quite an interesting career as a driver, moving up the ranks now to CEO. Dottie, tell us the craziest thing that's ever happened to you on the job in public transportation, if you can, if you're not legally obligated not to say it.
Yeah, right. There's a few things that we probably shouldn't share for the protection of those the others involved. I think, in early years, there were some scarier vehicle accidents that I was responsible for responding to. I can remember one in which we had an individual in mental distress who was actually trying to commit suicide by bus. And that was frightening. And I will never forget the feeling as I drove down to go respond to that accident. I was responsible for safety and I needed to respond to the accident. And just the whole time, I just was in my head going, please, if there's a God, please, God, don't let this person be dead. And they were not. We were fortunate that the individual had been unsuccessful. But just knowing the lives that are at stake every single day, I think is something that happened to me very early in my career and really stuck with me because, we really are people are entrusting us with their lives every day. And so understanding that is both a privilege and a responsibility, but they're also trusting us to get them where they need to go and to help make their lives a better life to live. And so really just taking that to its utmost. But that it's always the scariest stuff that sticks with you the most, I think.
Absolutely. Dwight, how about you?
When I was in Dallas, the Cowboys had won their first Super Bowl in 20 or 30 years or whatever it was. Look, at any rate, well, Cincinnati, have they won any? So sorry about that. So we have this big parade. Downtown is a gridlock. And the craziest thing I saw were people standing on top of the bus having a party. They'd opened up the escape hatches and were literally standing on top of buses partying.
It's a good time.
Oh, absolutely. So, but yeah, those are the two.
All right. Shawn, no suicide stories. Come on, keep it light.
Yeah. First of all, go Bengals. We're going to be on the way back. We a lot I can and cannot talk about. I spent the most of my career in operations, so we saw a lot of wild stuff happen. Probably the weirdest thing that ever happened was GAP 2 public transit agencies I worked for was we had a guy who, when he was a young kid, he used to grow up. He would ride the bus, and he would ride the bus back to our Queensgate terminal with the operator because his parents weren't at home. He felt safe there, and so he always wanted to be a bus driver. And so when he became an adult, he went to the Goodwill and found some uniforms that one of our employees had donated, created a badge, and he had a YouTube page. What he did is he would go to one of our transit centers, and when the operator would go in to use the restroom, he would take the bus around the block for 5 minutes and YouTube video the transaction and post it on the internet. And so we finally figured it out when somebody saw the video on Facebook. And so we ended up, we had to get law enforcement involved, and we sort of came to an agreement because he was a good guy. So we just said, look, you can't be on the property anymore. You can't be anywhere near transit. So he got a full ban. So fast forward 2 jobs later, when I get to Vancouver, I see a picture of the same guy on our website buying one of our buses off of an auction. And I'm like, what the hell? So I had to tell him, I said, you got to get this picture off the website. And they're like, oh, he's like our biggest fan. He likes all our stuff. And I said, listen, I had an issue with that guy moons ago. You got to get him off the website. But stuff like that, I think, is the fun part of transit. We deal with the weird stuff all the time. But sometimes the weird stuff is hilarious too, right after we figure out who we got to pay real quick. But then it gets kind of fun to talk about it later. But
All right, Adam, you got a good story for us?
Yeah, no suicides. I almost had a birth on a bus once, but yeah, that was in London. But I would say I had not heard of the term bus fans, what you just mentioned, until I went to London. And then I discovered this phenomenon of people that their hobby was to either train spot or bus spot. And although in the UK, the average age was about 75, I think, of these people. Then I went to Hong Kong and Singapore, and I discovered that actually there's such a huge fan following of the buses. And so anything we would do, you had like hundreds, if not thousands of people turning up with their cameras, standing in the bushes, taking pictures of new routes or new liveries. We had drones coming up on our 7-story depot to try to see the first glimpse of a new livery. But their average age was 14. Like, they're kids. And you know what? That was really touching to me, that a whole new generation of kids basically were passionate about public transport. And I think as an Australian, very similar to the US, I think we need to find a way to tap into the next generation so that they really love and own public transport, because to me, that is the future of our cities.
That's great. Very good. All right, one more round of questions down the line here. Many of you may not know, but Andy got his start in aviation and was at British Airways for 20 years before he came into transit. Talk to us about that transition, Andy, and what did you bring from your aviation experience into public transport?
Well, you better ask my team that, I guess. Look, there's many similarities. It's hugely safety critical. Safety is first priority for all of us. Huge people leadership. Massive complexity from an engineering and technical perspective, and of course customer service. They're the key elements. From a BA perspective, I was running their global operation. TfL is now a London operation, so the geography is different, but the decision making is similar. The timeframes are different. But I think the two big things I would say that one I've brought in and one that we need to learn from aviation. One is we have got to be far more customer centric in terms of how we operate. We've got to think much more proactively around how we give customers choice, particularly when there's disruption. We've got to be able to communicate more proactively to our customers. We kind of have a disruption and forget about them because they can, unlike aviation, they can find their own way home generally. So we need to be much more putting the customer at the heart of our decision making, which is something we're really focused on in TfL. The second thing that I'm pushing really hard for is we should learn from aviation. They are, they learn from tragic events, but they are incredibly proactive in terms of how they develop new technology, and they are far quicker at putting it into practice and then consistently adopting it across the globe. So if you look at safety in aviation, it is phenomenal, and we need to be much more proactive as an industry, working together, which is one of the reasons why I'm here, to see how we can share and learn from each other. But we all do everything slightly differently, and it adds cost, it adds complexity, and it adds a hell of a lot of time and money to us actually making a difference. And we need to learn from aviation and how they can do that, and how we can learn from that.
That's excellent. Dottie, talk to us about what new technologies you see coming in future, and how are you going to utilize them? Maybe AI.
Yeah, some of the stuff that we are kind of nibbling around the edges at right now, really just trying to identify the use case and looking for some grants, if anybody from the USDOT is listening, to help us do that. One of them is using AI and just advanced camera analytics. We have a significant number of cameras in our system. We have cameras at many of our BRT stations. We have cameras all over all of our buses. We partner with our local city to be able to view the traffic cameras that we see there. One of the use cases that we think would actually be very beneficial to us, a big piece of what we operate is a commuter rail line. So we operate commuter rail on freight rail tracks. We actually also operate the freight rail. But there are portions of that commuter rail line that go through ranch land. I mean, they go from suburban communities through ranch land to the next suburban community, then into town. And in Austin, we have issues with people who are experiencing homelessness making encampments along the right-of-way. And an encampment along the right-of-way is dangerous for a lot of reasons. The pedestrians on the right-of-way is the biggest one, but also we continue to have significant drought and fire risk. So when you're camping, that's also an issue. And so we're hoping to be able to use the cameras that are already on our vehicles that are going up and down that line all day, every day, to look at what was there the last time a vehicle came through, 30 minutes later, what's there, 30 minutes later, what's there, and tell us when we see the evidence of human activity and we have an encampment that we need to go talk to the folks and help them find a different place to build their encampment. Currently, we do that with a very labor-intensive process. We send a group of community intervention specialists. We have social workers on staff that we will send out once a month on the weekend, and they'll ride the line in a high rail with one of our rail staff, and they'll go see what they can see, right? And that works, but it's a very labor-intensive process, and we can't always see the things because we don't know, oh, wait, this has been disturbed. There's actually people over here. And so we're hoping to be able to do more and more things with the many cameras that we have. I think there's a lot that can be done to just be more efficient and effective at what we do.
That's awesome. Thank you. Dwight, I want to ask you a little different question to close up. You've been in executive management in many different jobs in many different cities, and I'd like you, in our podcast, you shared some interesting thoughts for mid-level managers who want to move up, lessons from your career. Give us one or two of the lessons for people who work in public transportation today to help them.
Okay. Find a good mentor that can help you and be honest with you. And don't be afraid to fail. If you're afraid to fail, you're already screwed.
You're not going to make a difference if you're afraid to fail, right?
Correct.
You'll be a cheerleader, not a change agent.
My first promotion, I went from bus operator to assistant manager. That hasn't been done before or since then, because I was willing to take the risk. And so you've got to be willing to get the mentor, and be willing to take a risk. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it is. And so anytime, if you ask any of these people here, the gentleman from London, he went from aviation to transit. That's a risk. So
High profile.
I think if you will,
Biggest transit system in the world.
yeah,
No risk
yeah,
there.
no risk in that at all. But I think that those are the two things, and the mentor who will tell you the truth. And I do have one more thing to add.
Good.
Introspection. The one person that we lie to the most of is ourselves. So you really have to be honest with yourself, because when you look at the failures that you've had in your lifetime, what's the one common denominator? You. So failures, and you learn from them. Be honest about yourself. This is my role in this. It's easy to point the finger and blame your boss for whatever, but what did you do to cause your boss to take the action?
That's good. Shawn, I'm going to ask you to keep that going for just a minute, if you don't mind. I think what a lot of folks don't realize is that when you move into the senior chair, all the easy decisions have already been made before they get to you. The decisions that have a template for them, A plus B equals C. The ones that come to the CEO job are the ones without a template that require judgment. Judgment that's been forged in the fires of 1,000 decisions that you've made along the way. And like Dwight just said, you've integrated the lessons from them. Oh, that didn't work. I better do something different next time. Give us your thoughts on that. And as a leader, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I would say first, like Andy, I came from aviation also right after 9/11. And I was in a position where I was starting to see a lot of information that came post 9/11. And I said, man, I got to get out of this. Like, this is too much, and sort of work my way into public transit at that point. But I think the one thing that we talk about a little bit as CEOs, we talk a lot about the CEOs Council, is sort of, it's one of the most amazing jobs you could ever have. It is also one of the loneliest jobs you can ever have, because it is your responsibility to make sure that every single person under your care knows that you got it. Doesn't mean you're always right. It just means they got to know that you got it. And sometimes that's really taxing. Things are going to come your way. Like when the pandemic hit for us, I was with our board, our deputy CEO, and another individual in Washington, D.C. the day they enacted the Stafford Act and closed the doors to the Capitol. And so we're trying to get our board out of D.C. And I remember the three of us were kind of sitting around at Baltimore Airport, the only place we could get a flight. And we're kind of like, what the heck are we going to do? And I just remember at that point in time, it was up to sort of the three of us to build a plan. And I remember my deputy CEO saying, hey, I really want to help you, but this is your call, boss. You got to figure this out. And I remember kind of never feeling more lonely in my life than thinking I'm about to make 1,000 wrong decisions over the next 30 days. Because, right, I thought 30, 60 days turned into, hey, yeah, I was wrong right there. But I think you got to own it. You got to be authentic about what you're doing. You got to let the workforce know that who you are is who you're going to be as a leader. When you need to be strong, you got to be strong. When you need to make the call, you got to make the call. Managing board relationships is interesting too, because you got to make sure that even if you don't agree with what they want, you have to find a way to keep them involved and make sure that their thoughts and opinions are heard. And that's sort of an interesting space that employees don't necessarily see or have to deal with, and then communicate those expectations to your employees. I love being a leader. It's one of my favorite things in the world. But one of these days I'm going back to operations just so I can get back on the street. But yeah, I love it. I love it. But you got to make sure you got the people around you that give you good counsel. I've been super fortunate in my career to have some of the best senior staff and director level employees to walk next to me anytime I needed somebody to walk next to me. And I've always been thankful for that. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for those individuals. And like Dwight said, for some of the mentors I had. There's one right over there, Bill Sproul. Like I could walk through this hall right now and talk to 100 people that impacted my career, if not more. And I'm so thankful for that. And I know each one of us could do the same thing.
Yeah,
So.
that's great, Shawn. And Shawn has just been named head of APTA's Mid-Size Bus Council, so congratulations on that. Adam, you've operated public transportation, I think, on 4 continents, and you've operated 5 continents. Give us some final thoughts and lessons learned along the way.
I think what was just said previously is really wonderful, and it does get lonely as a CEO. And you do have to take a lot of risks, and your job is literally solving problems non-stop. And in an industry that's quite thankless in many ways, it's like the blood system in the body. Everyone expects it to work. No one really thanks your blood system for working, but when it stops working, when there's a clot or a problem, there's a major problem. And so often you're dealing with crisis management issues. I guess I've been really blessed in many ways, but also inspired, having experienced London, Singapore, Hong Kong. Like you said before, 3 of arguably the top cities in the world when it comes to buses. And seeing how a public transport system can transform a city. And that really inspired me when I said before I went to London and then the Singapore experience. It really inspired me to dedicate my life to this industry because we can make such a difference. And all of you here are, I assume, in this industry. Thank you for being in this industry. It is one of the most important industries in existence. The impact we can have in cities, the impact we can have in transforming lives, improving a lot of the problems we collectively face as a society. I don't think we say that enough. And I think we need to congratulate the people that are doing well in the industry. These guys here doing all a fantastic job, and all of you. And I think we need to bring that spirit of encouragement and working together to really make a transformation. I get really sad when I hear about a major project that's collapsed, like what Andy was talking about before. So much time, energy, resource gone into it, transformational for the country. And often we have so many hurdles to get over, and we make it so hard for ourselves. we need to make it easy and a priority to invest in public transport. So that's the message I leave for you. And thank you for everyone that contributes to our industry.
Thank you. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. This whole panel will be on a Transit Unplugged podcast. If you want to share it with your friends, it'll be coming up soon, and also the TV show. And remember, at the heart of what we do is compassion for our passengers. As all of them have said, we make a difference in their lives. When we do it right, things go smooth. We don't often get thanked. When we do it wrong, we can ruin their day or even their life. So let's go out there and give it our A game every day. Thank you, Modaxo and Vontas, for sponsoring it. Thank you, our panelists.